Hello, my name is Leanne Bickerdike, and my story is The Curse of the Baldoyle Widow and the Shipwreck at Ireland's Eye. It is curious that the most commonly told story in my town, it should have its basis in old superstition. You see, people of Baldoyle believed that the body of a murdered corpse, it would bleed afresh when touched by the murderer itself. And this was a practice here that lasted well into the 19th century. And this is where our story takes place, of the curse of a Baldoyle widow. On a cold winter's night of 1803, a ship belonging to an East India company was ravaged, wrecked by a mighty storm that spread out all across Howth, Baldoyle and Ireland's Eye. And as the story went, the incident, it proved devastating for the passengers and crew, who all died and perished amongst the sea. But the same, however, was not said of the people living along the coast, as a guard was placed to protect the ship and riches, but a considerable part of this cargo, it had just floated away. And the fishermen and the people of the town, they reaped in the fine cargoes of the ship, for laces, silks, tobaccos and wine did it have, which were found scattered out all amongst the coastline of Baldoyle. But with this ship ready to snap in two, the guard was summoned to leave. But Miss Sullivan, an old wise woman known to many in these parts of Baldoyle, she approached a well-to-do farmer, whose name unfortunately was actually never known, but for the sake of the story, we're going to call him Driscoll, who lived near Baldoyle, and she pitched a savage idea to him. There was still plenty to be saved on that ship, and if a horse and cart might be sent out, there would be plenty of riches for all. At first the farmer refused to entertain this idea, but eventually he allowed himself to be persuaded, greatly against the advice of his wife. But at 11 o'clock that night, under the cover of pitch darkness, 4 horses and 4 carts were sent, and Miss Sullivan told where they could retrieve this treasure. It quickly emerged Miss Sullivan had greatly miscalculated the timing of tide, and the water began to rise and surround all the wheels and carts, and the farmer who couldn't swim wished to go back. The man he had brought was by the name of Darby, and Darby persuaded, go on, we'll be reaching the high pit of sand very, very soon. But at this point, all other 3 vehicles had turned to escape. But when Driscoll finally made the decision to abort, that tide was so high that horse began to swim. Darby, who had mounted the back of the horse, was clinging on to its mane. The farmer was clinging on to him, dragging off the back of his coat. This water rose high, and it rose higher until Darby, seeing the position was becoming desperate, became anxious for his own life and slipped off out of the arms of this heavy jacket, leaving the farmer encumbered with the jacket on top of him. And then he began to swim for the shore, with the cries and screams of the farmer well left behind to drown. And it is said that Darby turned up to this farmer's wake the next day and began to cry, that he had done all he could to rescue the man, but was obliged to leave due to his own struggles. And at the time it was custom for every man-woman to place one hand on the body at the wake. And when Darby did so, it is said that this corpse began to bleed. And the widow immediately, murderer, murderer, she began to cry. And she placed a curse on him, that he might die the same way as her husband did. Now, there was no proof of the actual accusation, but Darby thought it best to leave the town. And he did. He went to Wexford and began a horrible life of crime. And when he was eventually tracked down and returned back to Baldoyle, he found no hope of escape from the police, who chased him, and they chased him out onto the beach as he began to swim further and further out to the land of Ireland's Eye. His strength, however, was no strength for the ocean. And he drowned not too far from the scene of his former treachery, this fulfilling the widow's curse of the farmer he had left to drown years prior.